Welcome back, Defenders. Today we're going to start by following up on that arsenal that was destroyed outside of Moscow, and a state of emergency was declared as huge explosions rocked Russia's Vladimir region. This was 264,000 tons of Russian munitions going boom. And because this is such a highly populated area, and this occurred during the daytime, there are countless videos showing the primary explosion and all of the secondary explosions. This has to be the largest explosion I've seen of the entire war caught on camera. And it's caught on camera from angle after angle after angle. And they all look bad. I'll link the videos down below if you want to see it for yourself. But in my previous video, I said Ukraine must have got it with a drone or something. And Ukraine's not taking responsibility for this attack. Yes, it might have been an inside job or partisans, or it could have been an accident. The joke online for 3 years is that Russians shouldn't be smoking near things that go boom, and this might be genuinely a case in which a Russian soldier was carelessly smoking in a hardened bunker and triggered these massive explosions. What's the truth? We'll never know, but this wasn't a Ukrainian drone. There were no drones spotted in the area prior to the explosion. So this might have been Russia's carelessness to destroy the main arsenal to protect Moscow in the event of a war. Satellite images reveal extensive damage to Russia's 51st GRAU arsenal in the Vladimir Oblast, and I was waiting for the satellite images, and all we have so far is the low resolution. And even the low resolution, this still looks really bad. Here's the before, and then here's the after. You can count up how many of these bunkers or buildings were completely obliterated. Here's the before, here's the after, and it's got to be 20 to 30 of these bunkers that completely detonated. This is almost a total loss for the Russians. This is hysterical, but an important lesson to remember. Don't underestimate how bad the Russians are at absolutely everything. Russia is their own worst enemy, and they have been this entire time. Here's the top story from the last 2 days. This is a very dangerous moment. Zelensky warns against the U.S. withdrawal from the peace efforts. Donald Trump is pressuring Zelensky to accept a peace deal that would recognize Crimea as belonging to Russia. This is Donald Trump's 7-point peace plan that the Russians are not advocating for. The Russians have never mentioned themselves that Ukraine has to recognize Crimea as belonging to Russia. This is coming from Donald Trump. And this gives no guarantee. This is not a peace deal. This is Trump placing pressure on Zelensky to offer this to the Russians to see what the Russians will do. But here is what Donald Trump wants. Ukraine must abandon Crimea forever. Cessation of hostilities along the current front line. The U.S. will lift all sanctions imposed against Russia. The Zaporizhia nuclear power plants will be transferred to the United States. The U.S. will then begin an energy cooperative with Russia. Direct negotiations between Ukraine and the Russian Federation without security guarantees. Ukraine must refuse to ever join NATO, but Ukraine can still try and join the EU. And then Ukraine has to sign this mineral deal with Donald Trump, surrendering all their natural resources. Trump's insane. He put out this wall of text complaining about Obama, and here's the important thing from this text. This discussion of Crimea. Trump says, Crimea was lost years ago, and it is not even a point of discussion. Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, so that was just over 11 years ago. And to say that Crimea is lost forever. Russia took this 11 years ago, and they're never giving it up. Crimea will never go back to Ukraine. Crimea will never be independent. This ignores recent history. In what universe can Ukraine ever retake Crimea? What do you think people ever said about Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania? How is it possible they were able to emerge after Soviet dominion and occupation for 45 years? And then once these three countries became independent from Russia, their average per capita GDP standard of living is now higher than the average Russian, and Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania are members of the EU and NATO. Russia wants the world to forget this, that when Nazi Germany was invading France and Belgium and the Netherlands and Norway, the Russians were invading Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland as well, and Romania. This was June of 1940, and for the people of the Baltics, they had to live under Russian occupation until they were finally free and independent, more than 40 years later. So where we're going with this is 11 years is not that long. 11 years compared to what the Baltics had to suffer under Russian occupation, it's not that long. So I think Vladimir Putin knows this. At some point in the future, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, there could be a destabilizing event in Russia in which Crimea breaks away, or Crimea wants to rejoin Ukraine, or Crimea wants to be independent. For Ukraine to subvert international law, to subvert the UN Charter, and publicly declare that Crimea belongs to Russia forever, this would condemn and trap the people of Crimea to legally belong to Russia forever. And Russia is obsessed with Crimea for its strategic location. These rings show the range of various missiles and aircraft. And from this base in Crimea, they can dominate the Black Sea, they can dominate Eastern Europe, they can dominate the Caucasus, they can even expand operations in the Middle East and even Africa. This is why the Russians are so obsessed with controlling Crimea. What is Zelensky's response? Emotions have run high. Zelensky reminds the United States of its stance on Crimea during Trump's first term. Zelensky's response to Trump's demands is to just share with him his own Crimea Declaration from July of 2018. This was Donald Trump's publicly stated, declared position on Crimea. The United States calls on Russia to respect the principles to which it has long claimed to adhere and to end its occupation of Crimea, as democratic states seek to build a free, just, and prosperous world. We must uphold our commitment to the international principle of sovereign equality and respect for the territorial integrity of other nations. This was Trump's Secretary of State in 2018. This is Mike Pompeo. And this is Trump's Secretary of State in 2018, declaring that the United States will never recognize Crimea as belonging to Russia.
Today, the Trump administration is releasing what we're calling the Crimea Declaration. I won't read the whole thing. I will submit it for the record. It's been publicly released as well. But one part reads as follows, quote, "The United States calls on Russia to respect the principles to which it has long claimed to adhere and to end its occupation of Crimea." End of quote. I want to assure this committee that the United States does not and will not recognize the Kremlin's purported annexation of Crimea. We stand together with allies, partners, and the international community in our commitment to Ukraine and its territorial integrity. There will be no relief of Crimea-related sanctions until Russia returns control of the Crimean Peninsula to Ukraine.
There will be no relief in sanctions until Crimea is returned to Ukraine. That was Donald Trump's official position in 2018. And the Russians aren't really a part of this. This is probably the Russians telling Steve Witkoff what to tell Trump, and Trump is placing pressure on Zelensky. But Russia claims they are ready to end the war if Ukraine cedes the 4 disputed oblasts. This is to get a ceasefire, not to end the war. They're not saying they're ever going to end the war. But to get a ceasefire, they want Ukraine to give up the territorial boundary of Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. The Russians are demanding they be allowed to get to the other side of the river so they can get in artillery range of the city of Mykolaiv. They want the city of Zaporizhia, 700,000 human souls, and they want their artillery to be within striking range of Dnipro, city of 1 million. They want the large cities of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, and this is the most natural resource-rich area of Ukraine, so of course they want this territory. And basically they want Ukraine to give up all of their fortifications. All of their defensive lines they've spent years building, just give them up and move back 30 to 40 kilometers in every direction so that we have a better position to attack you when we want to resume this war. Russia's never going to stop. Zelensky says Ukraine is ready for direct talks with Russia, only after a ceasefire. March 11th, it was now a month and a half ago that President Zelensky offered Russia an unconditional ceasefire across the front lines to begin peace talks and negotiations. This is what Donald Trump and the United States said they wanted a month and a half ago. And for a month and a half, Vladimir Putin has just been telling Donald Trump, no, I am not going to agree to an unconditional ceasefire to engage in peace talks. Because this is what the Russians want to do. This is what the Russians are never going to stop doing. Acts of terrorism. The Russian military on the ground sucks. They're not advancing. They're not making progress. The only thing that Russia can successfully do is terrorize people with missiles and drones. And Donald Trump is not even willing to sell for profit Patriot air defense systems so Zelensky can protect his cities. I'm going to run through some pictures and videos. I'll link everything down below. This was a 145-year-old school in Sumy, a local historical landmark, and the Russians felt the need to blow it up. Russia has been attacking and blowing up all of Ukraine's schools and hospitals, churches. They're all civilian targets. That's the point. This is an apartment building in Zaporizhia. Russia has run out of good targets, schools and hospitals to blow up. So they're just indiscriminately blowing up apartment buildings. Acts of terrorism, hoping that Ukraine will just submit. This is an apartment building in Pokrovsk. I'll link these videos down below. I can't play them, unfortunately. This is an apartment building in Kyiv. This was struck last night. And this is what it looks like in the daytime. A completely residential area in the capital city of Kyiv. This is a European capital that was just attacked by North Korean ballistic missiles. These apartment buildings were destroyed by the Russians with North Korean ballistic missiles. And Donald Trump is not willing to sell Patriot air defense systems to protect this city. I can't show you videos of people suffering and in distress. I can't show you videos of destroyed buildings. So I'm going to risk it and try and show you this video. This is a resident of the city of Kyiv last night, enduring the barrage of drones and missiles. He's fine. He's not injured. But this is what the people of Ukraine are suffering through every single night now. This is a picture of school children gathering outside one of these destroyed apartment buildings, waiting for news on one of their classmates. Their classmate didn't survive. Russia kills children. They kill women. They kill elderly people because their military is incompetent and they can't make progress on the battlefield. Here are thoughts from Ilia Ponamareno. I want to save time for those of you who are new to this conversation. The problem is not Ukraine has to give up something to force Russia for peace. The problem is that no matter what Ukraine gives up now, whether it's Crimea, the Donbass, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Odessa, Kharkiv, it will not give any sort of peace, and it will only strengthen Russia in its goal of defeating and eradicating Ukraine as a nation and incorporating it back into its empire. The rest is just idle talk. If Ukraine could surrender Crimea and surrender these 4 territories for peace forever with Russia, they probably would do it. But that's not what the Russians say. The Russians on Kremlin state TV every day publicly declare this is a genocide, and they're never going to stop. They're never going to stop until the Ukrainian language, the Ukrainian identity, is erased from this planet, and all that remains is Russia. And every indication, every public marker says, of course, this is Putin's plan. Russia doubles the budget for the state-sponsored youth army. This is the Putin Youth Army, and in the 2025 budget, they just doubled it. Russia is getting millions of their children ready. This is indoctrination, this is military training for middle schoolers and high schoolers, because they know these wars are going to go on for decades. Russia has now committed itself to a decades-long project of restoring their great empire. And why wouldn't you be tempted to do this? For any Russian autocrat, you look at the map of what the Russians controlled, and they controlled half of Europe, directly or indirectly. And they're going to not stop. Eventually, they'll go for Central Asia. Eventually, they'll go for the Caucasus. Eventually, they may even contest with China. But Vladimir Putin has set the Russian people on this path, and they're not going to stop. These wars are going to go on for decades until Russia gets back everything they think should belong to them. And that includes all of Eastern Europe and Central Europe. Here are thoughts from Boris Johnson. Putin indiscriminately butchers more Ukrainian civilians, killing and injuring 100 in Kyiv, including children. And what is his reward under the latest peace proposals? The right to keep sovereign Ukrainian territory he has taken by violence, the right to control Ukraine's destiny by forbidding NATO membership, the lifting of sanctions against Russia, an economic partnership with America, the chance to rebuild his armed forces for the next attack in a few short years. Boris Johnson is a Trump supporter, and this is Boris Johnson, without saying Trump's name, condemning what Trump is doing here. So this was bad timing from Vladimir Putin. Trump is trying to force a bad peace deal on Ukraine, and Putin screws it up by killing all these children in Kyiv, bombing civilians. So Trump felt the need to put out this tweet this morning. I am not happy with the Russian strikes on Kyiv. Not necessary, and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop! 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get the peace deal done. This is pathetic. Donald Trump is the weakest and most pathetic president the United States has ever had. And Trump can't help himself. He loves the Russians, he loves Putin, and he is so desperate to make this new alliance between America and Russia happen. So it's concession after concession. Trump dismisses group that dealt with Russian war crimes against Ukraine. The White House has dismantled multiple programs designed to hold Russia accountable for war crimes. U.S. Special Envoy to make his 4th visit to Russia since Trump took office. Witkoff is back on the plane. I'm sure every time Witkoff goes to Moscow, he returns with a briefcase full of gold bricks. Witkoff is excited to go back and talk to Putin to see what maybe he can get. I mean, this guy is obviously enriching himself to take on this position. It's all corruption, guys. Here's the stupid painting. Witkoff mentioned this on the Tucker Carlson podcast. Vladimir Putin, to flatter Trump, commissioned a famous Russian artist to paint this picture of Trump and then give it to him as a present. So right now, this painting from Vladimir Putin is probably hanging in the White House somewhere. And this is what it's really about. This is what actually motivates the president and what he cares about. Trump Tower project in Moscow might be offered by Putin. And this is something that Donald Trump has dreamed about for decades. The first time that Trump went to Russia was in 1987, and he even wrote about in his book that he would love to build a large luxury hotel across the street from the Kremlin with the cooperation of the Soviet government. Trump then had a Miss Universe pageant in Moscow in 2013, and he once again affirmed he wanted to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. And even when Trump was running for president in 2016, he was trying to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Michael Cohen confirmed this. This is not some fringe rumor in the media. The Russians are talking about this on Kremlin State TV. Here's what they said. They mentioned the potential of a Trump Tower being built in Moscow. The main thing to do is to deprive Ukraine of the opportunity to be the source of a new war, and our attitude about this is unshakable. At the same time, we must understand that the framework of Russian-American relations is certainly broader than the settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. If the pace of the negotiations is slowing down because of Europe and Zelensky, then it is important for us to develop maximum cooperation in the other area. Let me repeat, we are open to any proposals such as the return of American businesses to our country. If Mr. Trump wants to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, I think there will be no obstacles in principle. Someone then jumps in saying there is no space. I think we will find a good place in Moscow, and thus Trump will immortalize himself and the improvement of our relations with a visual symbol. We are fighting with our own developers here, while you are inviting foreign ones. We're stating this as one possible solution to a complex of issues. With most Trump towers around the world, Trump doesn't own the buildings. He didn't build the buildings. He just puts his name on the building, and there's a licensing agreement, and he sells Trump merchandise in the gift shop. But yeah, I mean, Putin could just give him a building in downtown Moscow, and Trump puts his name on it. Trump's happy, and Putin gets to keep Ukraine. Putin is happy. This is power politics in the year 2025. This is absurd and stupid. And of course, guys, U.S. has not used up tools to pressure Russia. So where's the good news? If you made it this far in the video, if you're still watching my videos, you've got to be pretty demoralized. But there's hope. Things have changed drastically here in the United States the last 2 weeks. And it's because Trump is an idiot and he keeps doing stupid things. But this is a Fox News poll. This is Fox News, guys. Their 100-day mark poll. And this is where the last couple presidents have been in approval on their first 100 days. Bush was at 63, Obama 62, Biden 54, Trump in his first term 45. And Trump today has a 44% approval rating according to Fox News. And he is underwater on every single issue except border security. So 55% of Americans approve of Trump on the border. But he is underwater. He is losing on every single issue, including guns, taxes, tariffs, inflation. Americans are pissed. And Donald Trump started a completely unnecessary trade war with China, expecting China to back down, expecting China to just give a minor concession to make these exorbitant tariffs go away. And China told Trump no. China just told Trump to screw off. China spokesman Gao Jiakun says that Trump's blackmail negotiation tactics will never work with China. A deal while exerting extreme pressure is not the right way to deal with China and simply will not work. It gets worse. Jia Kun also called media reports and claims by Trump that he has spoken with China and is close to a deal as fake news. So China is telling the public that Trump is lying, saying that anyone in China is negotiating with Trump. We have made it very clear that China does not look for a war, but neither are we afraid of it. We will fight if fighting we must. Trump is terrified. Trump is terrified of China. And the reason why is because the CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot went to the White House to explain to Trump in person that if Trump does not back down, stores are going to go empty. Shelves here in the United States will be empty within 2 weeks if Trump does not back down on these tariffs on China. In the 3 weeks since the tariffs took effect, ocean container bookings from China to the United States are down over 60%. The United States imports $600 billion worth of goods from China every year. 95% come across the ocean. Those goods then sell at retail for $2 trillion. So American companies, Walmart, Home Depot, Target, they import $600 billion worth of goods from China. They then sell them in stores here in America for $2 trillion. That is profits. That is jobs. That is tax revenue. And it's all stopped. Everything has stopped because China is not willing to bow down to Trump and give him symbolic concessions or let him win. So Trump crapped his pants, and he's now backing down. The clips he's put out the last 2 days have been hysterical, and he looks depressed, he looks sad, he looks defeated. And here's him talking about the price of eggs, and he actually said the words, "Just leave me alone."
That I was president, somebody started screaming at me that eggs are up. I said, I just got here. And in the first week, they were going crazy. You remember that, Linda?
Yes.
They were going crazy. They're saying, egg prices are too. I said, I'm here for 1 week. Just leave me alone. This is a fake news media. And I said, what can I tell you? But Brooke Rollins, our secretary.
He's the guy that campaigned saying on day one, I will bring down the price of eggs. And the price of eggs are still at an all-time high. The reason why they're at an all-time high is there's a bird flu epidemic, and the president can't actually control the price of eggs. Donald Trump lied about everything to get elected. So Trump has lost on every foreign policy battle he's picked. China called his bluff and is now dictating a trade war. Iran is doing whatever it wants. North Korea is being completely ignored. All Democratic allies are either appalled at Trump or fighting back in whatever way they can. Greenland and Panama are showing Trump the finger, and Europe is preparing for a day without the US. And the Russians basically own Trump at this point. So Trump is the weakest he's been, ever, including his first term, and he's falling fast every single day. So Ukraine can use this. Ukraine can use this because support for Ukraine is a popular issue here in the United States. If Donald Trump's approval rating drops, then business leaders won't do what he says. Local, state, and local politicians won't do what he says. Trump understands that his popularity is his power, and currently he is weakening. So my advice to anyone in Ukraine, I don't know if anyone in the Ukrainian government watches my videos, but here's my advice to you, is to politely tell Donald Trump no. Don't burn any bridges. Don't make a big deal. Don't curse him out or say anything inappropriate. Just respectfully and politely tell him no and say, we would really appreciate America's help. We think America is a great country, but our independence and sovereignty is too important. Our people are going to continue fighting on. One of the mottos of America is live free or die. Nobody wants to die. Dying is not the goal. But living as a slave in a future Russian empire is not a good alternative. So there might be a point. Here's my prediction. The United States is probably going to cut off military aid and intelligence sharing and cooperation again, and they're going to say, we're done. We're going to walk away from Ukraine. But the war is not going to stop. The questions every day being asked to Trump about Ukraine are never going to stop. And this is going to drive Donald Trump crazy. And maybe we'll have to go a couple weeks or even a month with the United States just trying to ignore Ukraine and Russia. The war continues, the war carries on. And this is just going to make Trump look weak, make Trump look ineffective, and it's going to drive Trump nuts. And at some point, to make this war end and to make this issue go away, he's going to have to turn on Russia. Additionally, if Trump can't force Ukraine to surrender, why would Russia reward Trump? The reason why Trump is picking on Zelensky is because he thinks Zelensky will fold first. If Trump applied pressure on Putin versus Trump applying pressure on Zelensky, Trump is just saying who will give up first. And he chose to go after Zelensky because he thought there was more to gain by partnering with the Russians. But if Ukraine just says no, what's Trump going to do? Nothing. And it'll be terrible for him. His approval rating will continue dropping if he completely abandons Ukraine. So the protests are working. The next nationwide protest will be on May 1st. If you're American and you have the time, please show up to one of these local events. If it's not on the 5051 website, you can Google your city May 1st protest and you can figure out where and when you can show up. Bring a sign, bring your friends, fight for your democracy. Good news, Russian stock markets and the ruble tumble on news of downgraded Ukraine peace talks. There was a spike in the ruble and the Russian stock market, thinking the war might be over soon. But no, I don't think this war is going to be over anytime soon. This war will only end when Russia stops attacking Ukraine. And that probably won't happen until Vladimir Putin is dead. The price of oil is also at a 4-year low, so Russia is under extreme economic pressure to find a way to end this war soon. Ukraine is also striking back. Ukraine strikes Russian military drone factory in Tatarstan. They've struck this before. This is in the city of Yelabuga, and this is 1,200 kilometers from the border. And yes, Ukraine has the ability to strike 1,200 kilometers deep into Russia. There are videos, not of the damage. I haven't seen any damage of the building, but lots of videos of the Ukrainian drones in the sky. One piece of good news, Denmark allocates $48 million for artillery ammunition to Ukraine. Thank you so much to the fantastic people of Denmark. Final video I have for you is 2 women singing in the metro station as Ukrainian civilians shelter underground from Russian drone and missile attacks. Continue resisting. Russia will be defeated. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.